In August 1945, as the Pacific War was drawing to a close, the Americans, sensing the right moment, began implementing their plan to plant mushrooms on Japanese soil. But these mushrooms were not ordinary mushrooms. They were a type of weapon of mass destruction, unlike anything ever seen in human history. In just a few seconds, a brilliant light flashed and an intense heat spread with temperatures equivalent to that of the sun. A firestorm, carrying lethal radiation, engulfed the two cities, flattening everything. More than 100,000 people were instantly incinerated. But that was not the end. Now let's explore one of the most tragic and controversial events in history: the United States dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In 1941, after Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States officially entered World War II, transitioning from a neutral nation to a combatant. As a global power with the world's top economic and military capabilities, the US, in coordination with the Allies, began systematically breaking the Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan. The Japanese faced heavy defeats, from the Battle of Midway to intense air raids by American forces. On the early morning of March 10, 1945, while millions of Tokyo residents were still asleep, more than 300 B-29 bombers from the US dropped 500,000 incendiary bombs and napalm bombs, creating a massive firestorm that killed around 100,000 people in just one night. From March to June 1945, Japan continued to suffer devastating losses at Okinawa, the bloodiest battle in the Pacific. Over 77,000 Japanese soldiers died, and their last defensive line on land was broken. However, on the Asian front, while Nazi Germany had surrendered unconditionally, Japan remained determined not to accept defeat. The samurai spirit, which placed great emphasis on death and duty, continued to fuel Japan's resistance. Kamikaze suicide planes still inflicted considerable damage on Allied forces. They believed that if they could prolong the war, the US would eventually be forced to negotiate and Japan would achieve a favorable deal. But they were wrong. The Manhattan Project, a top-secret plan, was initiated on September 17, 1942, with a budget of $2 billion and the involvement of 130,000 people, including the world's top scientists. Under the leadership of physicist Robert Oppenheimer, two types of atomic bombs were developed, one using uranium and the other plutonium. On July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb was successfully tested in the Jornada del Muerto desert in New Mexico, producing a massive fireball and a mushroom cloud that reached 12 kilometers in height, with an explosive power equivalent to 20,000 tons of TNT. This outcome not only surpassed expectations, but also marked a turning point in human history. In July 1945, US President Harry Truman issued the Potsdam Declaration, warning Japan that if it did not surrender, it would face total destruction. However, Japan hesitated, deeply divided. The Imperial Army prepared to defend, while politicians sought reconciliation through the Soviet Union. This infuriated Truman. The US needed a clear victory to assert its role in World War II and to avenge the humiliating attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. As a result, the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima in August 1945, opening a tragic chapter in human history. President Truman reminded that the attack on Pearl Harbor was an unforgettable tragedy. When facing a fierce enemy, sometimes you must fight fire with fire. Washington's political leaders believed that using atomic bombs to attack Japan would accomplish two goals at once: swiftly ending the war and sending a clear message to the Soviet Union that the US possessed a weapon capable of determining the outcome of any conflict. 4 major Japanese cities were targeted, including Kyoto, a major cultural and industrial center of Japan; Hiroshima, a large military base with many warships and huge munitions stockpiles; Yokohama, a site of numerous critical military factories; Kokura, Japan's largest munitions depot. Kyoto was initially chosen as the primary target because it was not only an industrial center, but also a symbol of Japan's culture and science. However, U.S. Secretary of War Henry Stimson strongly opposed this due to his personal attachment to the city, having honeymooned there. For this reason, Kokura and Nagasaki were added to the list of alternatives. On July 31, 1945, the L-111 assembly of the atomic bomb, codenamed Little Boy, was declared ready for deployment. The bombing mission was initially scheduled for August 1st, but a sudden storm in Japan delayed it. On August 5th, General Curtis LeMay confirmed that the mission would proceed on August 6, 1945. Little Boy was a uranium-based atomic bomb, 3 meters long, 71 centimeters in diameter, and weighing 4,000 kilograms, containing 64 kilograms of uranium-235. It was designed to detonate via a collision mechanism. 2 uranium cores would collide to reach critical mass, causing an explosion. On the afternoon of August 5, 1945, U.S. military technicians removed the bomb from storage on Tinian Island, carefully inspected it, and sealed any gaps in the nose to ensure proper detonation. That afternoon, Little Boy was transported by special vehicle to North Field, 2,400 kilometers from Japan. The bomb bay of the B-29 aircraft named Enola Gay was opened, and the bomb was loaded using a hydraulic lift. On the morning of August 6, 1945, a squadron of B-29 aircraft was deployed, 1 bomber, Enola Gay, 3 weather observation planes, 1 blast measurement plane, 1 backup plane. At 2:45 a.m., Enola Gay, piloted by Captain Paul Tibbets, took off. By 6:30 a.m., the plane reached 31,000 feet and headed for Hiroshima. The weather was clear and the sky was blue. At 7 a.m., Japanese radar detected an American aircraft but did not intercept it, thinking it was just a lone reconnaissance plane. At 8:15 a.m., Enola Gay dropped the Little Boy bomb over Hiroshima. The bomb bay doors opened, and just 44 seconds later, the bomb exploded at an altitude of 550 meters. A brilliant light flashed, followed by a terrifying blast, creating an explosion equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. The shockwave violently rocked the B-29. Hiroshima was engulfed by a towering mushroom cloud over 12 kilometers high. The heat from the explosion caused the surrounding air to reach thousands of degrees Celsius, while the temperature at the explosion center reached 4,000 degrees Celsius. Everything within a 1.6 kilometers radius was completely incinerated. Buildings and vehicles melted. People were burned alive or turned to ash. Some left behind only shadow-like imprints on the walls. The city of Hiroshima, with a population of around 245,000, suffered immense losses. 70,000 people died instantly. Tens of thousands were severely injured and irradiated. Victims died in the following days from severe burns, hair loss, and internal hemorrhaging. 2 hours after the explosion, Americans heard President Truman's announcement on the radio, broadcast from the USS Augusta. "We have successfully harnessed the fundamental forces of the universe. If Japan does not immediately surrender, they will continue to face firestorms from the skies, such as mankind has never seen before." On the same ship, Truman held a press conference, emphasizing, "The Japanese started the war with us from the air at Pearl Harbor. Now they will receive it back from the air, but with much greater power." On August 8, 1945, alongside radio warnings to Japan from the Sapon Islands, around 6 million leaflets were dropped over 47 major cities. The leaflets described the atomic bomb's destructive power, equivalent to 2,000 bombs dropped simultaneously, and urged the Japanese people to petition the emperor to end the war. However, the Japanese leadership continued to ignore the warnings. Japan still had 5 million soldiers, 10,000 planes, with half of them being kamikaze fighters, and enough fuel to last another 7 months. In response, the US decided to use a second atomic bomb, codenamed Fat Man, to finish the job. Fat Man was 3.3 meters long, 1.5 meters in diameter, and weighed 4,700 kilograms. Unlike Little Boy, it had a plutonium-239 core and was designed to detonate via implosion. When detonated, the force of explosives compressed the plutonium until it reached critical mass. Fat Man was initially scheduled to be dropped on August 11th, but due to unfavorable weather, it was moved up by 3 days. The bomb was carefully stored and protected in an air-conditioned warehouse with a rubberized floor to prevent any accidental sparks. On the evening of August 8th, the bomb was loaded onto a B-29 BSC at Tinian Air Base in the Pacific. The aircraft departed that night to reach Japan in time for the mission. The crew of the B-29 boxcar, 12 members in total, was commanded by 25-year-old Lieutenant Colonel Charles and Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Atwood, who was tasked with detonating the bomb. Kokura, 170 kilometers southwest of Hiroshima, was chosen as the primary target due to its large munitions depot and surrounding industrial plants. Nagasaki was considered a backup target if the conditions did not allow for a bombing of Kokura. Unlike the first bombing, where things went smoothly, the second bombing encountered numerous complications with the complex plutonium bomb. As the aircraft entered Kokura's airspace, it found the target covered by clouds. However, the bombers were able to pinpoint Nagasaki as an alternative target. At 11:02 a.m., the B-29 boxcar dropped the bomb. Fat Man exploded 500 meters above Nagasaki, creating a 10-kilometer high mushroom cloud and devastating the city. It killed more than 70,000 people and left tens of thousands more injured. The Japanese government, after 2 atomic bombings, was convinced that it could no longer win the war. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender. This event changed the world forever, showing the destructive power of the atomic bomb and altering the course of history.